Hello again, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's exciting to have you here at Grit and Gears. This is the Busted Knuckle Academy. Class is in session, so shut up, sit down, and pay attention. Because what we're going to do today is we're going to take the project R32 to the dealership and we're going to start doing some maintenance on it. So we'll see you when we get there. Stay tuned.
Alright, so today we're going to be doing fluid changes to the front end to the vehicle, which is going to be the oil and the DSG. And the DSG is the paddle shifters and the front wheel drive on this particular model vehicle. Of course, before you start, we'll get all the disclaimers out of the way. Put the vehicle up on jack stands, secure it, a twin post lift, whatever you need to do. Make sure you're wearing all protective gear, i.e. eyes, ears, gloves, whatever you need to feel safe about doing any kind of mechanical work on your vehicle. So we're first going to start out taking the oil drain plug off. Pretty self-explanatory. This is where it's located underneath an R32. If you see here, we got a large oil drain pan. What we're going to do, of course, is pop the drain plug loose first, and then we're going to drain the fluids out of it to a point, and then we're going to go ahead and pull the DSG plug, which is, I'll show you where that's, or you will see where that's located here shortly. All this stuff you can do at home off a set of jack stands. It's very simple. I was just fortunate enough to have a friend that is a Volkswagen Master, Audi Master, and Porsche Master technician. Right there that you see is where the DSG drain plug is located. Something to take note of, and you will see in this video, when you pull this DSG plug, quite a bit of fluid is going to come out. That's not the only plug in this particular location. If you just pull this plug out like you're going to see here in a second, you're going to leave quite a bit of fluid still in there. This is actually the check plug as well as the drain plug or whatever. It's weird. You'll see here in a minute. After the fluid stops draining out of the DSG and the oil, there's a secondary orifice up in there that you have to take out as well to get all the fluid out of the DSG box. Something else that I learned from this particular technician, who's a friend of mine, Volkswagen technicians actually, this is actually technically, I guess you could say, the fill plug for the DSG as well. And when he takes the second piece out of there, it's supposed to be like the levels sensor or whatever. And here's where he's starting to do that. You see there was no fluid coming out. He did a couple turns, and then now you see more fluid coming out. Volkswagen recommends you fill from this area, but he actually fills from the top where the DSG filter is located. And he recommends you do that too, and he's come up with a little funnel and an adapter so he's able to fill the fluid from the top, so it ensures you get enough of the fluid back up in there. You're supposed to fill from the bottom and then pull out the pumping system that you use to fill it and then put the plug back up in there, which can be kind of messy. And you see here he takes it loose a little bit at a time. You'll see the fluid starts to slow down, and then he'll make a couple more turns and it'll come out a whole lot, and then it'll slow down again, etc., etc. But here in a few seconds you'll see this secondary. There you can start to see it coming out the very bottom. It's that black thing. Make sure if you're doing this at home, you use the proper tools, number one, and number two, you take this out so you get all the old nasty fluid out of the DSG box. Alright, it should come out this time, I believe. Yeah, there it is. Look how much more fluid's coming out. This car's got 120,000 miles on it. I don't know that the fluid had ever been changed. Now back to the oil drain pan. What we're putting back in place is an actual ECS. As you can see, it's an ECS, I believe it is, magnetic drain plug. So it's a replacement drain plug that has a magnet at the end to catch any kind of, we'll call it glitter, i.e. bearing material or whatever inside the engine that keeps it away from all the moving parts and prevents wear. So oil change isn't complete unless you put the drain plug back in. But once we had both the fluids completely drained out of the bottom of the vehicle, we put that tube that you saw back in after cleaning it with some brake parts cleaner, and that thing only goes hand tight. Do not put a wrench on that thing, okay? Only hand tight, because it's plastic and they break very easily, and you got to disassemble the whole DSG box to get it back out again. So do not put any kind of socket wrench on that thing. And then of course you put the regular metal plug back in and torque it to spec. Now this plug was a little bit tight going in because it's got some anodization on it. You can see how easy it is with the 3/8 ratchet. Just by hand with oil on your hand, it may be a little bit difficult, but it went in without an issue. It threaded on with a couple threads before we did this, so it was not stripped or anything. It's just tight going in because it's aluminum, and it's going into aluminum, where the factory Volkswagen one is steel. And that is the replacement washer that's required right there as well. So just put it in, torque it down, German spec, good and tight, half a turn before you break it off. That's actually a torque wrench there, and he's actually torqued it to the factory Volkswagen spec. Once we get done putting the plugs back in, you'll see that orifice piece again there, the fill tube. There it is, all cleaned up. It's actually blue. He does not put any pressure on this thing. He puts it in there by hand and just barely snugs it, and that's enough right there. And then of course you put the drain plug back on, and then we move to the top of the engine, where you'll find the DSG filter, and of course we got to put the oil filter on now that we've done the oil change. And of course you torque this to spec as well. All the torque specs for all of these parts can be found in the Volkswagen manual and online, of course. Okay, this is the old plastic housing oil filter cover. There's what he was just trying to do. There's a drain, a pre-drain, I guess you could see, plug there at the bottom. A lot of times they're over tight and it's almost impossible to get them off, and they can strip. But what you should do is unscrew that little one. It lets the oil drain out, and then you can take the big one loose. In this case it wasn't happening, so we had to go straight to the removal of that housing. Now we also replaced this with the aluminum ECS housing, which is highly recommended. It's made out of aluminum instead of plastic. These are notorious for cracking, and then you end up with oil leaks and all kinds of problems. So we did replace this. As you can see, look how much of a mess that creates. That's why that center drain is important, but people over tighten them and they end up breaking that housing off once they try to loosen it back up again. So you saw worst case scenario there. Best case scenario is unplug the drain plug in the very center bottom that you saw, which will alleviate this issue, but we didn't have a choice, and we knew we were going to replace it anyway, so we said, what the heck, let's do it the hard way. And of course you go up in here with brake parts cleaner and you clean all this off so you don't have any oil dripping on your driveway or anything, and you can see there's still some considerable amount of oil still draining out of there. So wipe everything off, clean it off, hose it down real good. The filter's actually inside that housing that came out, and here in a few seconds we're going to be replacing it with a new filter and the new ECS aluminum housing. Couple things to note real quick about the new ECS housing. It does come with a new O-ring. Your filter also comes with a new O-ring. It's right there almost by where his fingers are. Always put this on by hand at first. It can be a little tricky to get started the first time around because of the anodization. It's a little tight, but it's pretty straightforward. And if you look at this housing, you'll see it's still got that drain at the very center bottom. There's a bolt that goes in there with a O-ring as well. It's not installed there just yet. You'll see him put it on after we get the housing on and get it tightened down properly. It's the same size socket as the OEM housing. He just did that by hand before we do it with the ratchet and get it torqued down properly to ensure there's not cross-threaded. But that's the last one you'll ever buy if you get one of those from ECS. Glad that I got it. Aluminum also helps with cooling, so not much, but in a way it'll help keep the oil a little cooler, at least in that one little spot. And I won't have to worry about busting anything off anymore when I'm doing oil changes. So, good product, worth purchase. Next, after we do this, there's the drain plug. You'll see the little washer in the O-ring. It's a hex head, just like the factory one. Of course, you torque that one to spec as well. I like that this one's not recessed up inside of there, so it's should be a little bit easier to get back off. Next, we're going to move up to the top where we have the DSG filter. Okay, top side that you haven't seen, we had to remove the air box to access the location of the DSG filter. You can see I'm unscrewing it right there. Looks very similar to the oil filter, and I did find out after the fact that ECS does make one of these as well, and you can see the DSG filter right there. On the Mark IV R32s, or the earlier R32s, this right here that you see was a metal mesh filter that was not replaceable. This one here is commonly known as the toilet paper filter because it's just a white toilet paper looking roll. Now this is the funnel that he's using that you can see to fill the fluid back into the DSG system. And once it's full, then he replaces the filter. Now if you look down into where he's filling, where that filter is, there's a center hole and then like an outer hole. He's filling it through the center hole. So he's got this long necked funnel and it fits perfectly through that center hole, and he's filling the fluid through the center hole only. That goes straight down into the DSG. Now once that's finished, you put the filter on, the housing, torque it to spec, replace the air box, and put oil in the vehicle, of course, start it up, check for leaks, and you should be good to go. Next one, we're going to be doing rear diff service, so we will see you on that one. Thanks for watching.